So we're going to find out what some of the fans here think about Mr. Jon Bon Jovi's haircut. Can I ask you something? Do you like Bon Jovi's new haircut? Yeah.
I'm very pleased because my girlfriend's going to stay with me instead of going with him now, okay?
Today, we're diving deep into Bon Jovi's 1992 album Keep the Faith, a record that marked a significant turning point for the band and served as their response to changing musical landscape of the early 90s. The LA Times wrote about the album in 1993. Bon Jovi's response to the grunge threat was his most introspective, pop-oriented album. Measured against their past hits, Keep the Faith is widely viewed as a commercial disappointment. So let's get into it. The early 90s saw a seismic shift in the music world. Grunge was taking over, led by bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, and of course Soundgarden. The polished arena rock sound that had dominated the 80s was suddenly out of fashion. For Bon Jovi, a band that epitomized that 80s sound, this of course presented a significant challenge. Following two massive records, their commercial breakthrough, 1986's Slippery When Wet, and the highly anticipated follow-up New Jersey, the band members were now sick of each other and burnt out. Jon admitted to the New York Daily News that the band should have had a longer break between the albums. From 1983 to 1990, the band was largely living out of a suitcase, and some members also had some turmoil in their personal lives, going through divorces. They would take some time off, and during their time off, by the beginning of the 90s, Jon recorded a solo record, as did guitarist Ritchie Sambora. There was always this tension between Jon and Richie, not because they didn't like each other, but more due to competition between the two. Their manager at the time, Doc McGhee, remarked in the documentary Thank You, Good Night that it was a matter of proving how much each was worth in the band. Actor Emilio Estevez had a new movie coming out called Young Guns 2 in 1990 and originally approached Jon about using the song Wanted Dead or Alive.
I'm a cowboy on a steel horse I ride.
The song had frequently been played on the set of the first movie, but Jon suggested instead writing a song specifically for the film titled Blaze of Glory. Jon also admitted in Thank You, Good Night that he wanted to prove to people that he didn't need the other members of Bon Jovi to have a successful hit. Young Guns 2 star Kiefer Sutherland remarked, "When Jon Bon Jovi joined the team for Young Guns 2, we were all eating hamburgers in a diner and Jon was scribbling on this napkin for, say, 6 minutes. He declared he had written Blaze of Glory, which of course then went through the roof in the States. We were munching burgers while he wrote a #1 song. It made us feel stupid." Jon even made a cameo in the film as well.
Shot down in a blaze of glory.
Jon Bon Jovi's solo album Blaze of Glory went to number 3 on the album charts, with the title track topping the Hot 100 chart. The question, of course, a lot of fans had was, what's the status of Bon Jovi? Even the members themselves weren't really sure if the band was over or taking a hiatus, or what came next. But Bon Jovi reassembled in January of 1992. It was a new beginning for the band as they had fired their accountants, managers, as well as agents. Their then manager Doc McGhee admitted in Thank You, Good Night that around the time of Blaze of Glory, he could sense a shift in Jon. One point of contention was Jon's desire to get more into acting and doing movie soundtracks, something he disagreed with, telling the frontman to stick with the band. But instead of trying to work things out, McGhee simply let the band go, something he now regrets. To fill the void left by Doc McGhee, Jon started Bon Jovi management with the idea of protecting the band first. Everything else was secondary. Their road manager would run the whole thing. It proved advantageous because the band didn't have to pay out huge commissions to a manager. Jon told the LA Times, "The days of the big machine are over. The machine was getting too big and unnecessary. Things had to get more simple. It's silly to act like a big superstar with tons of people working for you. I was simplifying my life in other ways, so I figured I'd do it on the business side too." The band next needed to come back together and feel like one again, setting aside those old rivalries and hostilities. Jon had a conversation with Tim Collins, the then manager of Aerosmith, who enlisted a professional coach to help the band members out. Bon Jovi soon rented a house in the Virgin Islands in St. Thomas. The rules were that there were no girlfriends or wives allowed, it was just the band. Jon wanted to hire a psychotherapist who did corporate therapy, a guy named Lou. The idea was to have an intermediary with nothing to gain, unlike a manager, for everyone to talk openly in a safe place. It took some convincing, but eventually the rest of the band signed on to the idea. Making their follow-up record Keep the Faith was a more relaxed process, with the band going back to their roots, spending time initially in Bon Jovi's basement. Later they headed to Vancouver to work with renowned producer Bob Rock, who had engineered and mixed their earlier albums. It resulted in their first album in nearly 4 years, titled Keep the Faith. The 90s ushered in a second chapter for the band, showing more maturity and coming to terms with fame, turning 30, and changing times and, of course, appearances. Jon famously cut his hair during this era of the band, admitting that he had no idea that cutting his hair would be such a big news item.
You anticipate the fuss there's been from your loyal core fans when your hair was snipped?
I never anticipated the attention that it received, you know, both good and bad. I had no idea that anybody would even care or notice, to be honest with you. When I got a haircut, I thought to myself, hey, it'll grow back, you know, no big deal. But it truly got more attention than I ever thought. And it was, you know, it's not a case of Samson and Delilah here. I didn't lose, you know, my strength or nothing when I cut my hair.
Jon would also discuss where his frame of mind was at the time. I'm in a different place now. I'm not this wild, angry kid from New Jersey. Don't get me wrong, I haven't gone soft. I can still rock with the best of them, but musically, I want to explore other things, to explore myself more. As for what he thought of grunge, he added, I like a few of the bands, but some of the music is too negative for my taste. I'm an optimist. Too much negativity brings me down. He would go on to add that grunge would likely come and go, just like any musical fad, and only a few bands would survive, while a lot of the pretenders would fall by the wayside.
Jon makes no bones about not getting the grunge movement and not wanting to be part of the grunge movement. He's told me this personally. I witnessed it firsthand when I was at the Keep the Faith sessions in Vancouver, and Lollapalooza came into Vancouver. And I took the guys out of the studio to see Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. Ritchie stared at Eddie Vedder swinging on a scaffold and singing Alive, and Chris Cornell stage diving like, I get this. But he wasn't thinking, we're in trouble. He was thinking, this is real. Jon didn't get it and wasn't that interested.
However, the members of Nirvana had their own story about Jon Bon Jovi that was quite different than what he told the press, as they said here.
We did a photo shoot with someone for a cover of a magazine, and he was telling us the story of how Bon Jovi came in and said, he came in with a flannel shirt on, and he said, make me look like Nirvana. And he said, well,
that's pretty flattering.
Bon Jovi wants to look like us. You know something's wrong.
Keep the Faith increased the band's popularity overseas, and it resulted in one of the biggest tours that Bon Jovi had ever done. But at home in America, their popularity had dwindled because, you guessed it, grunge was the next big thing. And in a lot of interviews, country music was also brought up, most notably Garth Brooks. Some in the press claimed that Bon Jovi's new look and sound was a calculated response to the popularity of grunge, but Jon claimed they were going for a sunnier and more positive outlook, with Jon telling the Times, we were aware of what was going on around us. The musical landscape had changed dramatically. We knew we couldn't just repeat what we'd done before. This was the subject of some of the interviews the band gave in 1992. In fact, the executives at his label could see the shift in music, with Jon telling the LA Daily News, I played the album for some Polygram executives in July and they walked out going, we're in trouble. Jon responded to them by saying he wasn't going to record the same type of music he had done previously, and he also pointed out that when he played the same record executives You Give Love a Bad Name, they basically gave him the same response. As the band saw it, their fans had also evolved. Their longtime fan base was now more grown up in their early 20s, and they weren't trying to win over teenagers anymore, with Jon even admitting he was an old man to a lot of the youth, who were more likely into Nirvana. The title track set the tone for the album, with its uplifting lyrics which flew in the face of what was popular at the time. It was a call to persevere in the face of adversity, perhaps a message to their fans as much as to themselves. The song ended up peaking at number 29 on the Hot 100 chart. The record also took some impressive risks. If I Was Your Mother, whose intro actually sounds like something you might hear on Metallica's Black album, which was also produced by Bob Rock. The album's biggest hit, though, Bed of Roses, was perhaps the biggest departure. The song peaked at number 10 on the Hot 100 chart. Jon remarked about the track, "When I was writing that song in '92, I was in no mood to be writing a song due to the circumstances, and instead of putting the pen down and walking away from the piano, I sat down and wrote, sitting here wasted and wounded with this old piano, and the hurt that I was feeling physically that day." Keep the Faith ended up peaking at number 5 on the album charts and went double platinum in the States. Just for comparison's sake, New Jersey went 7 times platinum, while Slippery When Wet went 15 times platinum in the States. But in the UK, across the pond, Keep the Faith was more successful, with 6 singles landing in the top 20. The critics, who were never really fans of Bon Jovi, didn't really change their tune this time around. Keep the Faith got a D grade from Entertainment Weekly, while the New York Daily News called it soulless corporate swill. But for Jon, he never understood the term sellout, telling the interviewer, "I've never understood musicians who say you're a sellout if you're commercially successful. Didn't you write that song because you wanted a lot of people to like it?" he would ask. "If you want it to be like art, hang it on the wall." More importantly, the record showed that Bon Jovi could survive basically anything, changing musical trends, business turmoil, personal dust-ups, and come out ahead. Jon looked back, remarking to NPR, "The genre of music that we were part of was now going away, and, here was this sign of faith, which is all we really had to go forward with. We went into the 90s with a clear objective, and that was to believe in each other and have faith in what it was that we were all about." So what does the album mean in Bon Jovi's history? It's certainly not about following trends, but at the same time, it's also not being afraid to evolve. What do you guys think about the album? Let me know in the comment section below, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.